In Call of Duty Black Ops 2, the organization Cordis Die is one of the most fascinating and dangerous factions in the Call of Duty franchise. Created and led by none other than the infamous Raul Menendez, this movement became a global phenomenon, uniting millions in a rebellion against global injustices. In many ways, however, it was a terrorist organization. In this video, we will break down the origins, intentions, ideology and impact of Cordis Die, exploring how Menendez turned a personal vendetta into a worldwide revolution. To understand this, we have to take a look at the leader of the organization, Raul Menendez. He didn't have an easy childhood, as a revolutionary war was going on in his home country Nicaragua in the 1970s. In this conflict, the enemy rebels, known as the Contras, were American-backed fighters who brought horror over Raul's country. Thus, his negative attitude towards the West had begun. War and violence shaped his childhood. To make things worse, a heavy earthquake hit Nicaragua in 1972. Many people had lost their homes and belongings, including Raul's family. A year after the earthquake, in 1973, Raul and his sister were trapped in a burning warehouse. Both survived the fire, but his sister was severely disfigured. As it turned out, an American owner burned down the warehouse himself to collect the insurance fraud worth $11,000. This event triggered Raul's hate for the United States. In his teenage years, he and his father decided to start over and founded the Menendez cartel and began selling drugs and weapons. Their criminal business proved to be quite successful as they became richer and more powerful over the years. The Menendez cartel eventually achieved high status in the criminal underworld. The US government had been observing Raul's father and the cartel for some time and determined that the cartel's power had spread too far, which could affect future American operations. Therefore, the CIA was sent to eliminate Raul's father and killed him. Raul himself managed to escape at the last second. With his father's death, Raul became the new leader of the Menendez cartel. This event fueled his anger towards the US. Afghanistan 1986. In 1986, Menendez began to run arms across Soviet-occupied Afghanistan and made healthy profit. During our mission in Afghanistan, fighting alongside the Mujahideen against the invading Soviet forces, we learned that their leader, Mullah Rahman, whom we consider as our ally, is secretly working for Menendez, just like many others worldwide. Nicaragua 1986. That same year, in 1986, the CIA launched an operation to kill Menendez in his compound in Nicaragua. The US government had offered the president of Panama, Manuel Noriega, $1 million, and in return, the US was allowed to use the Panamanian Defense Forces to infiltrate the cartel village in Nicaragua and eliminate Menendez. During the mission, Woods and Mason fought their way through the compound until they reached Menendez. When Woods saw Menendez, he lost control and threw a grenade on him. Unfortunately, the grenade did not hit Menendez, but landed in the room of his sister, Josefina, and killed her. And as it turned out, Noriega turned on the CIA and helped Menendez by granting him asylum in Panama. Panama 1989. In 1989, the United States started the invasion of Panama to stop drug cartel activities and money laundering. The CIA's goal was to capture the dictator Noriega and thus perhaps find Raul Menendez. But when the team caught Noriega, he managed to mislead them. Then Raul Menendez showed up, and through an ambush he managed to kill Mason and Hudson. Yet he spared the lives of Woods and Mason's son David and allowed them to escape. After this event, Menendez went into hiding for 30 years and established his own private army. This marked the beginning phase of the organization Cordis Die. Cordis Die, the organization. Cordis Die officially became active on the 22nd of June 2014 and was a populist revolutionary movement, officially described as a public organization fighting against global injustices and standing up for equality. The organization claims that their main mission is to address social and economic inequalities that are present worldwide. Across the world, poor people and lower-class communities often deal with unfair rules, little political power, and fewer chances to improve their lives. Political leaders often ignore them and remain unwilling to reconsider capitalism or other existing models, while the rich ones like corporations, governments, and higher-class people make the rules. The poor majority is left to suffer from their exploitation. Therefore, Cordis Die positioned itself as advocate for the oppressed and marginalized, aiming to bring a more fair and balanced society in the world. Popularity of the group spread rapidly due to the charisma and influence of its leader. At this point, the leader of Cordis Die was not known. He was only known under the synonym Odysseus.
Odysseus? My ass.
Nevertheless, his personality attracted people to his cause and created a sense of loyalty among his existing followers. Cordis Die has gained a lot of attention through the internet. Websites and social media platforms such as YouTube, Instagram and Twitter allowed Cordis Die to gain more and more followers, and his subscriber numbers increased massively. Raul eventually revealed his true identity as the leader of Cordis Die. In the game trailer, we see a 2021 magazine that says that narco-terrorist Raul Menendez might be the actual leader of Cordis Die. So people knew Raul beforehand, but only as a terrorist. So even with his true identity revealed, he already had so many loyal followers around the world who were convinced of his cause. People just didn't care that he was a terrorist. They considered him as their savior and idol. Even in the catalog, he was referred as Messiah of the 99%. The US government, however, considered him as a threat and classified him as a dangerous terrorist. Raul's motives. Although Raul's motives were in fact personal, they were associated with some of his political interests. However, his main aim was to take revenge on the United States for what they did to him in the past. From supporting the enemy militia in his country's civil war, killing his father, destroying their drug cartel, to the disfigurement and death of his sister. Menendez is not a dumb man, quite the opposite. He knew from the beginning his resistance movement should never be considered as a terrorist organization, but rather as a group fighting for global equality. So, his main political target was to take down G20 nations and overthrow certain ideologies, including Western imperialism. For centuries, the West has economically benefited from the suffering of weaker nations. Their interventions are often excused by the claim of supporting democracy, maintaining stability, peace and human rights, or by the need to counter terrorism and defend allies. According to Menendez, the capitalist governments are responsible for immortalizing this system and using their power to maintain the status quo. He views the world's political and economic systems as inherently corrupt and oppressive. He saw superpower leaders as the architects of a system that caused widespread misery and believed that by eliminating them, he could bring about the change he envisioned. For Raul, the only way to overthrow the existing world order was to create anarchy and trigger a world revolution. Military and supporters. Raul hired thousands of mercenaries and military groups to join his private army. With the wealth and power he had built over the past 30 years in hiding, he promised them plenty of money. That's why so many people were willing to join his army and risk their lives in his operations. It can be suggested that a large number of Raul's forces were from Central and South American countries, as we hear most of them speak Spanish. With his scattered funds, Raul invested in advanced military technology as well as in weapons research and development. This allowed him to equip his soldiers with modern weapons, body armor and even stealth tech. In terms of vehicles, Raul's army has armed vehicles, unmarked Blackhawks, armored robots and all types of drones. Thus, the weapons arsenal of Cordis Die was quite capable of keeping up with the arsenal of the West. In the mission Karma, for example, we see some of Raul's Black Hawk helicopters arriving at the super island, transporting his mercenaries. One reason why Raul Menendez had access to all the advanced weapons was the company Tacitus Corporation. Tacitus Corporation is a defense company mainly producing drones and military technology. At some point, the company was awarded a $50 billion contract to develop advanced drones for the US military. However, in reality, it was a shell company for Raul Menendez. He invested in this company and obtained his military equipment from there. He used his influence in Tacitus to ensure that there were backdoors to the drone control system that were sold to the United States. This would allow his people to get easier access into the systems. Cordis Die is capable of constructing secret high-tech installations and bases around the world, such as in Myanmar and Haiti. In the mission Solarium, we find ourselves in an automated high-tech factory located beneath a temple in Myanmar. This factory is heavily guarded by Raul's Cuban mercenaries and is a top-secret facility of Cordis Die. The factory manufactures modern military technology such as drones, microchips, devices and therefore even uses 3D fabrication. The newly discovered rare earth element Solarium is also processed in this facility and plays a significant role for Cordis Die and Raul's plans. Thus, without the public's knowledge, Cordis Die had a major army for its private operations. Cyber warfare and hacking. Cordis Die has the best hackers worldwide. They use Celerium to increase their computer data processing capabilities. A group of engineers working with Cordis Die manipulates the Celerium into a computer virus that is then uploaded on the USS Barack Obama. The virus attacks US satellites and thus Menendez is able to control the entire US drone fleet. Chinese stock market incident. Cordis Die's ability to manipulate events is a great asset to the organization. For example, the 2014 protests in Iran and North Korea mentioned in the game. Both countries where people have to struggle with difficult political injustices and social disadvantages. The mastermind behind these protests? Cordis Die. But Raul was also willing to provoke conflicts that would plunge the entire world into chaos, like a world war or some kind of a global catastrophe. He wanted to use the chaos and the resulting anarchy of the conflict for his world revolution. And there is one incident that Raul managed to pull off. A part of Raul's plan was to destroy America and China and weaken their governments. To achieve this, he had to find a way to increase the tensions between the two nations. During the events of Black Ops 2, the world is in a second Cold War between China and the United States. However, this conflict was less about ideology or geographic expansion, but rather about political supremacy and economic power in order to improve military. At that time, the new rare earth element Celerium was discovered. This element works on the basis of quantum entanglement and has a huge amount of processing power and can therefore process data faster than any other known system. This would revolutionize technology for all time. More and more countries showed interest and the international demand for this element increased rapidly. They are required for electronics, consumer devices, superconductors, aerospace, quantum computing, and above all for weapons development. The largest quantities of this rare earth element are mainly found in China. China then controlled 95% of the Celerium production and dominated the world market for mineral resources. Many companies in the West required this element in order to remain competitive with their products in the global technology market and eventually became dependent on it, especially the Americans, as they wanted to use it to improve their military, and the drone race had also begun. Menendez's plan was to cause a war between the US and NATO against China and its alliance, the SDC, and from the ashes of the war's destruction, a new world order is to emerge, probably led by Cordis Die. As part of Menendez's plan to provoke tensions between America and China, he used a Celerium worm to hack the Chinese stock market and launched a massive cyber attack. The attack was successful and the Chinese stock market collapsed. The damage done to the Chinese stock market was so extreme that it even caused the euro to jump from a value of €1 to $3.25. Online, Cordis Die blamed the United States government for the attack, and in response to the cyber attack, China stopped all exports of rare earth elements to the United States. After this, Menendez's page was shut down by the FBI. 2 days later, the director of the FBI was found dead in his apartment. In a later mission, we managed to grab Raul and bring him to the aircraft carrier for interrogation. However, Raul manages to escape by an attack of his mercenaries on the aircraft carrier. But before that, he launches a large-scale drone attack on America and China. While the drones are attacking Los Angeles and some other major cities in the world, such as Hong Kong, we are trying to shut down the drones in a military installation of Cordis Die. Suddenly, Menendez transmits a live webcast. In the webcast, he describes Western materialism as absurd and calls on all Cordis Die followers to rise up and strike. What happened after Black Ops 2? The ending of Black Ops 2 is based on the decisions we made throughout the game. However, important for us is now the fate of Raul Menendez. If he survives, there are two outcomes. In the first scenario, Cordis Die launches a hacker attack, infecting electrical grids in the USA and all over the world with a Celerium worm. But the hacker Karma is the best hacker ever existed and manages to fend off the cyber attack and eventually becomes a celebrity. In this scenario, Raul Menendez has lost, so to speak, and his organization can no longer help him. In the second scenario, Cordis Die once again launches a cyber attack on power stations all over the East Coast. However, this time Karma is dead and not able to help, and our hacker, the so-called CIA nerd, is unable to stop the cyber attack. The high security prison where Raul is locked is probably also located on the East Coast. Therefore, his Cordis Die followers tried to cause a power outage, which eventually allowed Raul to escape. In case Menendez gets killed, there's a third scenario. After his death, a video of him was published in the internet by Cordis Die. He urges Cordis Die to continue and that his death was just the beginning. Supporters considered their leader's death as a call for revolution. As a result, large protest movements begin. Violent clashes between civilians and police forces take place. In Washington, everything seems to sink in anarchy. At some point, we even see the White House on fire. The future of Cordis Die. It is not known what happened to Cordis Die in the future. The game sequel, Black Ops 3, takes place in 2065. Since America and the world still look the same as before, it can be assumed that Cordis Die has failed. The only time we have anything to do with Cordis Die in any way in Black Ops 3 is in the mission Rise and Fall, when Lieutenant Khalil talks about Raul Menendez.
Guys are low.
How are you still holding on?
You can thank Raul Menendez.
What? Raul Menendez was a hypocritical egomaniac who thought he could make a better world by fucking everything up. Maybe so, but I wouldn't thank Menendez. He was a prick who got what he deserved.
Also interesting fact, there's also a connection to Black Ops 6. In Afghanistan, Kravchenko mentions that Menendez has people inside the CIA. In Black Ops 6, the main antagonist, Jane Harrow, has infiltrated the CIA together with the organization Pantheon and secretly acted as a senior CIA official. The organization began to do business and increase their influence in the shadows of the Secret Service. Pantheon was obviously Raul's secret source at the CIA, and it was even Woods himself who made this claim. We also got the new trailer of Black Ops 7 with Raul making an appearance, but I haven't looked into that yet. Yeah, so that's the story of Cordis Die. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one.